Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are strapping on our boots and heading out to the back 40, so to speak. We're tackling the surprisingly complex risks and legal obligations that come with owning vacant land. It's a huge investment, right? And it's not just about, keeping people off your property. It's really about managing significant liability when unauthorized visitors inevitably show up. So our mission today is to give you a shortcut, a clear guide based on our sources on how to proactively protect your assets, protect your investment. We're really focusing on the legal reality that the biggest immediate risk often isn't the broken fence, maybe, but the potentially catastrophic financial liability that trespassers themselves can pose to the landowner.
That's exactly it. That's the core conflict. And it's one that often catches new landowners completely off guard. While trespassing is, clearly defined as a crime, often carrying penalties for the trespasser, the immediate and frankly far bigger concern for you, the property owner, is that liability exposure. We're talking about the risk of a lawsuit if someone, an unauthorized person, gets injured on your land. And sadly, it happens. That inversion is what makes this so critical.
Okay, let's unpack this then. We all kind of get the basics of property rights, but legally speaking, why does the onus fall so heavily on the landowner, even when someone is, actively committing a crime on their property?
Well, what's fascinating here is how the motivation for prevention has sort of shifted over time. It's not just about protecting the physical stuff anymore, the timber, minerals, whatever. The primary driver now is civil liability. You simply cannot afford the risk of a personal injury lawsuit. And judges and juries often sympathize with the injured party,
Yeah.
regardless of their unauthorized status. This is why clarity in prevention, proving you took steps, is your absolute financial priority.
Right. And when we talk about trespassing, we aren't just talking about maybe a hiker wandering off trail once. The sources we looked at detailed some very specific high-risk actions, things that count as common violations and can lead directly to these liability problems. This includes the illegal use of recreational vehicles, so riding ATVs, side-by-side, motorcycles on existing roads, trails, paths.
Good problem.
Yeah. It's also about theft, sometimes high-value theft. Cutting down trees for lumber or illegally harvesting things like ginseng or other, natural resources.
Valuable stuff.
Then there's unauthorized entry into structures, breaking into a cabin, a camper, maybe an RV left on the property.
Creates risks inside, too.
And, of course, the classic violation, hunting or fishing on your property without explicit written permission.
That list really shows the range. But to truly hit home on this liability trap, we have to talk about one of the most dangerous concepts for landowners, the attractive nuisance doctrine.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting and maybe frustrating for landowners listening. This doctrine, it seems to almost contradict the whole idea of private property rights. What exactly is it, and why does it matter so much if you own vacant land?
Right. The attractive nuisance doctrine suggests that if you have something on your vacant land that could reasonably attract people, especially children, you have a higher duty of care, even if those people are trespassing. Think of things like an abandoned barn or a structure, maybe a pond or a quarry, even large construction equipment just sitting there.
So wait, even if I have no trespassing signs posted everywhere, like every 10 feet, if a kid gets hurt exploring an old shed on my property, I could potentially be found liable because the shed was an attractive nuisance.
Precisely. It turns the legal tables, doesn't it? The risk skyrockets because the landowner is now deemed responsible for taking reasonable steps to mitigate the danger posed by these features. If you have something that looks interesting, maybe fun to climb on, or potentially dangerous, you need to either secure it, completely fence it off, board it up, or ideally remove it. That insight alone should really drive proactive defense for any landowner. It's a big one.
Okay, that brings us squarely to the next logical step. If the burden is clearly on the landowner to show they gave adequate warning and dealt with known dangers like these attractive nuisances, what actually counts as a legal warning? You mentioned doing homework because state laws vary. That's important.
Absolutely essential. State laws differ quite a bit on how they define criminal trespasses. Let's use the Ohio Revised Code as a specific example, not to get lost in legalese, but it illustrates the types of criteria states often use. Conceptually, Ohio's definition helps us understand the law's dual focus, establishing 1, a lack of permission, and 2, clear intent or awareness from the trespasser.
That's a smart way to look at it. So we can maybe group Ohio's 4 conditions into 2 main themes. The first theme seems to revolve around the trespasser's sort of implicit knowledge or just a basic lack of consent, like condition 1, entering or staying on someone else's property without permission. Simple enough.
Right. And that connects to the second condition, which is a bit more nuanced. That's entering or staying without permission when you know you shouldn't be there because of existing lawful restrictions.
Mm-hmm.
This covers situations where the property type itself implies restricted access. It would be like a fenced construction site, even if you don't see a sign right at the point of entry.
Got it. It implies, like, if you know it's private land, the default assumption is no access unless told otherwise. Okay, so the second theme then deals more with explicit warnings and whether the person complied, making sure the landowner did their part to communicate. This sounds like conditions 3 and 4. Condition 3 covers entering or staying after being warned, either by a physical barrier like a sign or a fence, or maybe by the owner or someone working for them telling you to leave.
Exactly. And condition 4 is what you could call the refusal to leave clause.
Right.
This tackles the situation where the person's already on the land. Maybe they snuck on, but then they refuse to go after seeing a sign or being told directly they need to leave. What's really crucial here, if we connect this back to the big picture for the landowner, is that the law recognizes both the preventative warnings, signs, fences, and the act of refusing to leave once told. It underlines the need for clear, ideally documented communication. You don't want to rely on a trespasser just claiming ignorance later.
Exactly. You have to make that effort to warn them, make it undeniable. So knowing the responsibility rests heavily on the landowner to prevent entry, to mitigate dangers, and to handle liability, let's shift now. Let's talk about the actionable, proactive steps a landowner can actually take. How do you establish that clear warning and safeguard your land and assets?
Yeah, it really requires a layered defense strategy. Think physical, legal, technological, and financial layers. Starting with the physical and legal combo, the absolute essential is posting property lines clearly. Use highly visible posted or no trespassing signs. This helps satisfy that legal requirement for clear warning we just talked about, like in Ohio. You also need to physically secure the perimeter. Lock gates, lock doors on any structures. This directly addresses those attractive nuisance risks. Don't make it easy for someone to wander into danger.
In technology, that seems like a real game changer here. It used to be so expensive to monitor remote properties, right?
Yeah.
But not so much anymore.
That's absolutely true. On the tech front, the sources really highlighted how modern solutions are much lower cost now.
Yeah.
Often self-installed too. Think app-based video surveillance, maybe alarm systems, like ruggedized versions of Ring or Wise cameras adapted for outdoor off-grid use sometimes. They're deterrents, sure, but their real value might actually be legal.
Okay, interesting. What's the legal benefit beyond just maybe catching the person on video? How does a video clip help me in court if there's a liability claim or even for a criminal trespass charge?
It potentially changes the burden of proof entirely. Digital evidence gives you irrefutable proof. Proof of identity, maybe, proof of how often they've trespassed, and critically, proof of intent. If someone is caught on camera, say, cutting a lock or walking right past a clearly posted sign multiple times, that evidence shifts the incident. It moves from ambiguous, oops, I wandered onto your land, to clear, intentional criminal trespass. That distinction is massive, both for any criminal prosecution and for defeating a civil liability claim if that trespasser later gets hurt and tries to sue, claiming they didn't see the sign or didn't know.
Wow, okay. That link between relatively low-cost tech and a stronger legal defense, that's powerful stuff. But even with the best fences, the clearest signs, the sharpest cameras, there's probably no substitute for the ultimate financial safety net, which is insurance. And here's where it gets really specific, right? A generic policy probably won't cut it for vacant land.
That's absolutely right. Landowners must protect their family, protect their investment with a quality vacant land liability policy. It has to be specific. Your standard homeowner's policy. It likely will not cover a separate parcel of land that doesn't have your primary residence on it. And the coverage often needs specific additions, riders.
Okay, can you break down those necessary riders? What specific features should someone listening be asking their insurance agent about tomorrow?
Sure. First, make absolutely sure the policy specifically covers recreational use liability. Even if you strictly prohibit things like ATVs or hunting, you know people might do it anyway. You need coverage for accidents related to these illegal actions of trespassers. Second, if you have valuable natural resources, mature timber, maybe potential mineral rights, that sort of thing, you need dedicated timber theft or resource theft coverage. This is almost always a rider, not standard. You have to ask for it. And finally, critically, you need confirmation that the policy covers the legal costs associated with defending against trespasser lawsuits. Even if the suit seems totally frivolous, those legal defense bills alone can be ruinous.
Okay, so when we pull this all together, what we're looking at is a really robust, layered defense strategy. It involves dealing with those attractive nuisances, establishing legal clarity with signs and physical barriers, using modern tech-like cameras to gather solid proof of intent, and then backing it all up with that critical financial shield, a comprehensive, customized vacant land liability policy.
Exactly. You can't control everyone's actions, unfortunately, but you certainly can control your level of preparation and protection.
So, to bring this all together for you listening, the core takeaway here is the absolute necessity of being proactive. Extremely proactive. This shields you not just from, the nuisance and theft on your property, but more importantly, from that potentially crippling liability exposure, the kind that comes from unauthorized visitors who might injure themselves. Post the signs, lock the gates, deal with the nuisance risks, get the evidence if you can, and definitely buy the specific insurance you need.
And, this deep dive raises an important question for the future, building right on our discussion about technology. Given how easy and cheap it's becoming to get surveillance tech kits, these app-based systems capturing verifiable digital evidence, proof of intent, proof of repeat offenses, you have to wonder, how will the rise of all this digital evidence change the game? Will it shift the burden of proof even more? Change the core liability requirements for landowners dealing with trespassers down the road? That's definitely something for you to mull over as you think about securing your own assets.
That's a fantastic closing thought. Definitely food for thought. So take this information, please consider the specific details of your local state laws, and take a hard look at your insurance coverage based on what we've discussed today. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.